The opening scene features a widow and single mother named Virginie Hebrad. Let me try that again. Virginie Hebrad. I hope she's not the main character. She resides in rural France with her 2 children, Laura and Gaston. Ever since her husband's passing, Virginie has been managing his locust farm. Previously, the family used to raise goats as well, but after her husband's death, they shifted their focus to locusts. Despite her relentless efforts day and night, the business doesn't seem to be performing well. Lately, Virginie has been struggling to make ends meet, as her locusts are not reproducing like before, and many are dying off. One day, Laura takes her younger brother to his soccer practice where she becomes a target of bullying. This has been a regular occurrence, as all the teenagers in the city believe that selling locusts is weird. And they're right. Even Laura has started disliking her mother for this. Meanwhile, a customer visits Virginie's farm, interested in buying a large quantity of locusts. I just love them, you see. Unfortunately, Virginie doesn't have a sufficient quantity in stock, leading the customer to ask for heavy discounts. Since Virginie has already set a low price, she cannot further reduce it, resulting in the customer canceling the deal. I do not love them that much. Later in the evening, Virginie takes Laura to help gather some fresh grass. During this time, Laura learns about the canceled deal, leaving her disappointed as the family once again fails to earn the necessary funds to meet their daily expenses. Now that they are in desperate need of money, Virginie, as usual, calls her friend Kareem, requesting he lend her some money in order to make it to the end of the month. Generously, Kareem agrees, and even contacts someone to ask about the buyers for Virginie's products. Meanwhile, Laura's bullies upload a video online making fun of her mother. This finally begins to take a toll on the teenager, and she starts becoming angrier by the day. Elsewhere, a bored Gaston takes his pet locust out to play, but to his surprise, the insect starts feeding on his wound. This reveals that Virginie's locusts are interested in human flesh and blood, as opposed to what? Milk? Later on, Virginie and her children head to the city to do some shopping. During this outing, Laura spots the same bullies who had previously posted the offensive video on social media. In response, she goes to confront them, and even gets into a physical altercation with one of the bullies named Kevin. Friggin' Kevin. Unfortunately, the guy quickly overpowers her and ends up striking her in the face. Before he can cause any more damage though, Virginie intervenes and takes her children home. Fuck you, Kevin. Later, as her family reaches home, Laura vents her frustration on her mother. She says that she's fed up living in a house where she can't even shower without seeing a locust. Moreover, she is tired of being the laughingstock in her school, where everyone looks at her like an outcast. After Laura finally calms down, Virginie applies ice to her wound and reveals that she has received an offer for 40 kilograms of locusts. How do you weigh those things? She says that although he is not paying as much as she wants, it's a decent amount, adding that if she sells her lab along with the insects, she can have enough money to move somewhere else and start a new life. Hearing all of this, Laura finally becomes happy. The next day, the buyer, who turns out to be a duck farmer, arrives to buy the insects. However, when he sees that they are tiny and weak, he asks for a discount. He rudely tells Virginie that he is only going to pay her 200 euros instead of the previously agreed upon 600. As expected, this infuriates the poor woman and she kicks him off her property. Then she storms inside the locust enclosure and angrily trashes the nests. In the process, Virginie trips and knocks herself out. When she comes to her senses, she finds the locusts swarming around her and feeding on her blood from the wounds on her arm. This sends her into a momentary panic, prompting her to flee the enclosure. Overnight, the locusts become more active and aggressive, creating more noise than ever before. The next day, Virginie notices the change and becomes surprised. She speculates that it could have something to do with the blood they sucked out of her wound. Desperate for a change in circumstances, she partially opens the enclosure, unbandages her arm, and inserts her hand inside. Her assumption proves correct, as the locusts start devouring her wound and sucking her blood. By night, they become much larger and stronger. It's almost as if they are receiving protein from the blood. Yeah! Later, Virginie dons her protective suit to inspect the enclosure. Shockingly, she notices that the locusts are multiplying at a rapid rate and laying eggs like crazy. Although this is a very unusual situation, Virginie decides to take advantage of it. She hires Kareem and builds a much bigger enclosure to keep the insects. Virginie lies to him that she fed the insects parsley to make them more active. When Laura returns home and learns about the development, she isn't pleased, as she was hoping her mother would stop the business altogether. Later that evening, Virginie returns to the enclosure and provides more of her flesh and blood from her open wound. Her actions are extremely dangerous, but she disregards the potential consequences and remains focused on selling more locusts to secure much-needed income. In the following morning, Virginie loads multiple boxes of locusts and returns to Brienne to make a safe. Brienne, noticing that the locusts are now fresher and larger, purchases them at a reasonable price. As days pass, Virginie's sales begin to increase. The only limitation is the need to continually supply them with blood and flesh. Since it is impossible to always feed her blood and flesh, Virginie devises a solution and buys several liters of blood from a butcher shop. Upon delivery, she mixes the blood with flour, transforming it into solid clots before feeding it to the locusts. On the other hand, Laura becomes increasingly frustrated with her mother's growing obsession with the locusts. One day, she reaches her breaking point and cannot bear the noise emanating from the greenhouses any longer.
Yes!
As a result, Laura, in a fit of anger, tears open one of the greenhouses, which allows a swarm to escape. Meanwhile, Gaston is nearby in a truck playing with his goat, Huguette. Unfortunately, the deadly insects get attracted by the goat and attack it. The poor boy tries his best to save Huguette, but the locusts forcibly take it away.
Sacre bleu! Who will I play with now?
When Virginie returns from a trip to town, Gaston tearfully informs her that Huguette was taken by the locusts. Sensing that something is awry, Virginie instructs her son to stay inside the house, while she goes in search of Huguette. Not long after, she finds Huguette's lifeless body lying in the field, covered with hundreds of locusts feeding on it. This devastates her, but she doesn't reveal the truth to her son. Instead, Virginie drives him around the field, pretending that she is helping him find the pet. Upon returning home, Virginie questions Laura about the greenhouse tear, and the latter angrily admits her doings. This results in a heated argument between the two. Laura blames her mother for everything, while Virginie warns her against entering the enclosure from today onwards. After several days of relentless labor, Virginie decides to take a day off and treats her children to a beach picnic. While unwinding by the shore, she also shares her decision to allow Gaston to attend a soccer school camp, making him happy.
Maman, I kick the ball! Yes!
After enjoying a pleasant time at the beach, the family returns home, only to find Kareem waiting for them with a new scooter. It turns out that the scooter is a surprise gift from Virginie to Laura, which makes her thrilled.
Mama, I drive the scooter! Yes!
The same night, Virginie and Kareem have a small chit-chat over a cup of wine. Their conversation eventually takes a romantic turn, prompting them to kiss. Kareem attempts to proceed further, but Virginie stops him abruptly, presumably because she doesn't want to reveal her wounds on her body. In the next scene, we see Virginie contacting the butcher, requesting an immediate delivery of 50 liters of blood. However, the seller declines to engage in further transactions with her because she has been purchasing blood without any clear reason. He is also suspicious that she might be misusing it. This leaves Virginie in a state of worry, as she needs to find a source of fresh blood ASAP. Left with no options, she again starts drawing out of her own blood to feed the insects. Over time, her mental state begins to deteriorate, and she starts pushing people away from her. After reaching her physical limit, Virginie starts looking for blood elsewhere. One night, she notices her neighbor's dog roaming around her farm and decides to feed it to the insects. However, her reign of terror doesn't stop there. She even steals cows from nearby farms and feeds them to her locusts. One day, Laura returns home after dropping her brother off at soccer camp. She calls out for her mother, but receives no response. She then enters her mother's room and finds the floor covered in blood-stained clothing. Alarmed, she rushes towards the enclosure, only to witness a horrifying scene. Her mother in her undergarments, letting herself be consumed by the locusts.
Oh, le sexy.
This deeply terrifies Laura, prompting her to rush back home and look at her lock herself in the bathroom. She immediately contacts Karim via text message and tells him to come to her home because her mother is unwell. Not long after, Karim arrives at the farm where he finds Virginie preparing flour dough for the Locusts. He attempts to engage her in conversation, but she continues to ignore him. Soon after, she suddenly feels dizzy due to losing a lot of blood. Believing that it is because of her work stress, Karim brings her, as well as Laura, to his place and tries to cheer them up with a movie night.
We watch a Dracula, yes?
Later, while Karim and Laura are alone in the kitchen, she discloses the disturbing sight she witnessed on the farm earlier. Hearing this, Karim confronts Virginie, urging her to reveal the truth. However, she remains hesitant to divulge what she has been doing, leading to a heated argument between the two friends. Meanwhile, the neighbor enters one of the greenhouses to look for his missing dog. Inside, he discovers his dog's collar soaked in blood. Unfortunately, before he can react, the swarm of locusts attacks him, leading to his death. Later on, Karim drops Virginie and Laura off at their house, and after seeing them entering, he begins to look around the greenhouses. Before long, he comes across the lifeless body of their elderly neighbor, swarmed by locusts. This leaves him in a state of complete shock. Moments later, Virginie finds him outside and realizes that he's discovered her secret. They again get into an argument, and the crazy woman runs back to her house to confront Laura. She asks the teenager what she told Karim, but the latter refuses to talk to her mother and locks herself inside. Meanwhile, Karim goes to his truck and takes out a tank of gasoline. He then douses the greenhouses completely and lights them on fire. After noticing the commotion, Virginie runs outside and tries to stop Karim, but he throws her to the ground. Just then, the two realize that the locusts have escaped the enclosure and are gathering in numbers. Fearing for his life, Karim lets Virginie go and runs into the house, asking Laura to close all the doors and windows. But the rejected Virginie is still adamant on saving her business. She attempts to put out the fire using the fire extinguisher. However, while she hears her daughter screaming, she rushes to the house. On the way, she finds poor Karim being eaten by the damn locusts. In the next scene, Laura somehow manages to escape from the house, but she is relentlessly being pursued by the locusts. As she escapes into the nearby forest, her worried mother also follows her. When Laura realizes that she has no way out, she runs toward a lake. There, she notices an overturned boat and decides to hide under it. However, the deadly insects refuse to give up and start swarming the boat. The combined weight of the locusts start pushing the boat down, and Laura slowly drowns. After a while, Virginie finally arrives at the scene and takes action. She bravely cuts open her palms with a pocket knife. "Morbius, is that you?" and smears the blood on her face. Her plan is to attract the locusts towards her and save her daughter. As expected, the plan works, and the insects immediately surround her. Virginie then takes the opportunity to dive inside the lake. She goes deep into the water and holds her breath for a long time. Surprisingly, the locusts follow suit and die one after another by drowning. I don't know if that's what would have happened there. The movie ends as Virginie resurfaces and hugs her daughter tightly. She promises that she will shut down the locust business.